Hello and welcome to Practically Effective. This is a podcast by Will and I about effects, props and stunts in various films. And this week we are looking at Spider-Man from 2002. So Will, what do you think of Spider-Man?
I think the acting was hit and miss. Who's the actor who played Spider-Man?
Tobey Maguire.
Tobey Maguire, yeah.
Yeah.
His acting was, some of it was pretty bad.
Did you believe for 1 second that he was a high school kid?
No.
Do you know how old he actually was?
No.
He was 27 when the movie was released.
Wow.
So he must have been like 25, 26?
Apparently for the high school kids, they gave out cameras to a bunch of local high schools and just asked the students to photograph each other and based the looks on that.
Really?
Like they're all in their mid-20s, so they're trying to look like high school kids, but they're clearly all too old. And what happens right at the beginning? Are they on the field trip right at the beginning?
The very first thing that happens, Will, is a very long title sequence, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And then he's running down the road after the bus. And there's a little...
Yeah. It's never really made clear why, at the beginning, he's running towards the bus, right?
Yeah.
And he's clearly like the guy in the class that everyone makes fun of.
Yeah.
But that's never really... The origin of that isn't really... I don't know. It's it seems a bit weird.
Yeah.
That everyone picks on him, but...
Some of it's because he's such a nerd. He's not a big, strong, muscly man like all the other people in that school. And he looks about 25.
Yeah, that would do it.
And then they go on an exciting school field trip to
Columbia University.
A weird spider irradiating laboratory.
Yeah.
Which has the largest electron microscope on the eastern seaboard, apparently.
You said you can't use electron microscopes on living samples.
Really?
Yeah.
Would it kill them?
It would kill them, yeah. I like to think they've just got this really big electron microscope, but they don't actually use it. It's just there.
Yeah. I think the bit where they're like, oh, we've got 16 super spiders. And then one of the kids goes, there's only 15. And she's like, yes, we killed one in the electron microscope.
That's how we figured out not to use it. I do like how they have 16 super spiders, and the fact that one of them is missing doesn't seem to cause anyone any concern. Like, she says one of the researchers is probably looking at it, but you would think they would have some sort of procedure for saying, I've taken this one, you know.
The spiders would clock in and clock out when they're at work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently for that spider, some of it was CGI, but also they got a real spider and painted
it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a weird day at work, isn't it?
Right, what are we doing today? We're going to be painting this spider.
How can you make a spider do what you want? How do you direct a spider, Will?
I don't know how you would train a spider to do what you wanted. You just kind of wave it around and hope it does something interesting.
I don't know whether they made a web and then just put the spider on it, or whether they just set the spider free to see what it would do.
Hope it makes a web at some point where they want.
Yeah.
What did you think of the fact that he uses natural webs rather than building a machine like he does in the comics?
So I like it in some ways that he builds the web shooters because it's to show that he's a genius. But how did he come up with his web fluid? How does he make it? Why has no one else noticed that you can do this?
Yeah.
And also the fact that he's bitten by a spider and then decides to make a spider webbing. So he's got the natural superpower of the spider sense and the strength and speed and all that. And he's also got the techno prowess to make something. I think that's a bit too much. So I think choose one or the other.
Yeah, okay.
So I like the fact that it's all from this spider bite.
You're right, he is supposed to be a bit of a nerd.
Yeah.
But that then doesn't really come into it. He could have not been a nerd, and it would go through basically the same.
Yeah. But because there's a quote in one of I think it's the Captain America movies that is a weak man knows the value of strength. Because he's come from the bottom, he knows what it's like to be at the bottom.
Bullied and things.
When it started happening, you think that other people would copy it. But when they see someone who's got these web shooters and is firing this web fluid, that hangs around for 2 hours after he fires it. So someone could just take a sample and then reverse engineer it, surely.
Was the fact that it dissolves after 2 hours first established in the new Spider-Man, or has that been around before?
I think it's always implied that it dissolves, but he actually says it in Homecoming. What do you think? You prefer mechanical or organic?
I think organic is probably better, because mechanical is like, okay, he got bitten by a spider, but then like the sort of most spidery thing about him is due to him making some mechanical thing.
Yeah.
You know.
But then I suppose his spider-based power is more the sticking to walls, more than it is firing webs, because spiders don't do that.
No, but they still make webs, don't they, Joe?
You're right, Will! Suddenly it all makes sense. I thought that was the power of a silkworm he was displaying.
I'm not saying spiders go around swinging from walls with their webs. I'm saying webs like that are associated with spiders. That's my point.
So I think the webbing, they actually...
Fishing lines and foam and then CGI. You know the bit where Spider-Man is hanging upside down and he kisses Mary Jane? Apparently during that scene, because it was raining, he kept getting like rainwater filling up his sinuses and things. Yeah.
It looks like a really romantic moment, but actually he was pretty much drowning.
He was pretty much drowning, yeah.
I'm going to consult my notes. Oh, we meet Willem Dafoe, and we see his nonsense goblin glider device thing, and then...
Oh, yeah. Which I don't really see how that would be useful.
Well, imagine if you had one, it wouldn't be very useful. But if you had a load of them... But then, why put a guy on it? Why not just have that as a drone?
It's essentially a drone with a guy standing on top of it.
Yeah, so you could just shoot the massive man-sized target.
What really gets me, though, is he gets bitten by the spider.
Yeah.
That he surely knows is one of these special ones.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, like, tell anyone or, like, try and say, hey, I've been bitten by your spider. Is there any chance you have an antidote for its venom?
Yeah.
He just tries to ignore it.
He's like, I'm sure it will be fine.
It'll be fine.
Because he goes home and he's, like, really feverish, isn't he? And then he basically passes out.
Yeah.
I was going to say, should we talk about Aunt May and Uncle Ben quickly before we do?
Oh yeah, Aunt May, who is everyone's aunt.
Yes.
Everybody calls her Aunt May.
Inexplicably.
So I reckon that just her family tree looks very complicated. She's just everybody's aunt.
This world is really... It's quite cheesy, I'd say. Yeah. I don't want to say it's very comic booky, but it kind of is. People just say things, like say the things that are happening or the things that they're doing.
Yeah.
Like in the first scene where we meet Aunt May and Uncle Ben, it's just all exposition.
Yes,
like,
it is.
I've
lost my job and now I need to look in the newspaper for a new one.
Don't worry, I still love you.
Yeah.
We are a lovely couple. Also, you are quite old. At least we have Peter. And at least I haven't died a horrible death. Apparently the actor who played Uncle Ben, Uncle Ben is 68 years old.
Mm.
The actor was 75, but they still had to age him up with makeup.
So that everybody knows how old he is, Joe.
Yeah.
In case him pointing it out wasn't enough. I like how they went to that trouble, but still the high school students are clearly not high school students.
Yeah. There's that the spider sense scene. You a fan of that?
The spider sense scene.
Where so he's in the cafeteria. He catches the tray, which they did in real life.
Yeah.
156 takes, apparently. Yeah. He fires some webbing and then throws the tray over his shoulder at Flash.
Oh yeah, that's something else.
And then they have a fight in the corridor.
That whole scene happens I don't know, several dozen high school students.
Yeah.
See him dragging this tray behind him with webbing, attaching it and things. And then later on, Spider-Man comes around and is doing the same sort of thing. Yeah. And everyone's like, who is this Spider-Man? I can't figure it out.
We've never seen anything like this.
We've seen anything similar to this before.
Yeah, because the next scene is the one where Flash tries to beat him up and he does all the weird flips and
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then everyone like gets angry at him, even though Flash was attacking him, and it's not like he even sort of hurt Flash or anything. He literally just dodged all of his attacks. And then everyone's like, "Oh, you're such a bad person, Peter Parker, for not letting yourself get beaten up."
Yeah. It's his place, Will. He should know his place. Alright, Green Goblin then?
Green Goblin.
Yep. Good villain?
The whole visual style is a bit bonkers.
Yes.
Apparently because he was all green,
Yeah.
and Spider-Man was all red and blue,
Yep.
they had to film their shots separately, because if they used a green screen, then they couldn't see Green Goblin. And if they used a blue screen, then they couldn't see Spider-Man completely. So they had to film them separately.
Oh, cool. Do you like his costume? Do you like his get-up?
No. It's really dumb. I don't know why he wears that. And the thing is, that's literally just the same flight suit as the guy was wearing earlier. So I don't know why you would design that.
A weird goblin-y flight suit.
Goblin-y flight suit.
So there's a really good makeup animatronic head, which they trialed for the Green Goblin. And like the lower half of the face and the mouth is just makeup. But then the eyes and like the brow are all animatronic. And it's amazing. It's really creepy. And they did some tests with it, and it looks brilliant. But they didn't use it in the movie. They swapped it out for the helmet.
Why not?
I don't know. I think it's because why would his face go like that? Is it like, did the gas turn him into him, mutate him?
Yeah.
So
especially because even after the gas, he's still like, he becomes Green Goblin sometimes, and then other times he's Norman Osborn.
Yeah, he can be like, Harry, I don't know what happened, with a terrifying green face. But it's a shame because the animatronics are amazing. It looks really, really good.
On the topic of the gas,
yep.
Apparently they couldn't find a green gas that was non-toxic.
I heard this,
which I don't understand.
I've just got this image of Sam Raimi going up to like the behind-the-scenes people and being like, "Hey guys, we need a green gas, and where you can fill a chamber with green gas." And they come back a week later and they're like, "Well, Sam, we can do white gas." And he's like, "Okay, I wanted a green gas." And they're like, "Well, we've got green gas. Problem is, it's toxic."
That's what stuntmen are for.
So I believe they used white gas and then recolored it.
They used white gas and then CGI'd it green.
But yeah, why is there no non-toxic green gas?
I'm sure there is. I mean, I haven't checked, but I'm sure there is.
I don't understand why he's like, this is the most important test that we can do to secure our funding. I'll get the one scientist who has no faith in this formula to come and be the guy who helps me.
No, he didn't have no faith. He just wanted it done properly.
He wanted to go back to formula. So he was like, we should not test this gas on humans. And he's like, I know who I'll get for my human test. This guy.
No, he's probably their best scientist. That's probably why.
Well, he's dead now.
Actually, I'm not sure he is dead, because really all that happens is he gets thrown against a wall, doesn't he?
Yeah, but in the next scene, the board people come in and they're like, "Oh, we found this guy dead in the in the lab. He's probably been murdered
by some sort of Green Goblin."
Yep.
Oh, that brings me on to my favourite character, the newspaper boss.
Yes, J. Jonah Jameson.
My favourite character by far. I want a film about him.
Just about him?
Yeah.
What would, if you were writing a film about him, what would you have him do?
It would just be him running the newspaper. And people would come to his office with like reports or whatever.
Yeah.
Saying, "Oh, I did this or whatever," and he'd say some stuff. Fire them, probably.
You just have 2 hours of him just yelling at people.
Yeah, that would be it.
I like the idea that he's like on the way out to a conference or something, and like he has to go to the airport and then get on a plane and everything, and everywhere he goes there's like Spider-Man is battling supervillains, but he just doesn't notice, or he just gets really mad all the time because these superheroes are just interrupting his day.
No, I prefer the idea of him just sitting in his office getting angry at people. You know what we haven't talked about?
Go on.
Between when he gets his powers and properly becomes Spider-Man.
Oh, yes, he does a stint as an amateur wrestler.
He does, yeah.
Yeah, do you like that scene, or is it weird?
Well, I mean, I think the whole point of it is to be like, oh, look, he's going down this dark path, but then he gets spoken to by Uncle What's-His-Face, and then that guy kills his uncle. And I must use my powers for good. Yeah. That's the point of that scene.
He's not dark, he's just using it for his own selfish ambition. More than for anyone else.
Rather than being responsible.
Exactly.
Apparently the wrestler in that was an actual wrestler.
Really?
And apparently in his early career he had the name The Spider. So there's that. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good. The thing about this movie is it's full of nonsense scenes, like the wrestling, like Norman Osborn talking to himself in the mirror, and the scene with the massive balloons where Spider-Man is jumping across the massive balloons at that parade.
I don't remember that bit. I remember the massive parade.
Then Spider-Man leaps across the top of the balloons.
I mean, I can believe that happened, but I don't remember it. It's
full of nonsense like that, but it's like consistent. So I can't say this one scene is stupid. If Batman Begins had a scene where he comes back to Gotham and then fights in an amateur wrestling ring against Bonesaw, it would have been a nonsense. Because Spider-Man is like that all the way through. I can go with it. I'm on board.
It's like a weird mix of like Running Man level ridiculousness, but sort of just like toned down a bit and put in a sort of somewhat okay-ish film.
I actually really like Spider-Man. I had forgotten how much I liked it. Just because it is over the top. I really like right at the end when Spider-Man brings the Green Goblin's body back and Harry is like, what have you done to my father?
Yeah.
And
literally, you just saw him putting the body down.
Yeah.
And then he's clearly being stabbed with a giant spike, which, as we all know, is Spider-Man's main method of attacking people.
Yeah.
I quite like Norman Osborn. He didn't deserve what happened to him.
No?
No.
But then is the Green Goblin a separate entity, or is it just part of him that was brought out by this formula?
I think Norman Osborn was a good guy who didn't do nothing. And then, okay, he comes under a lot of pressure to get this formula to work, right?
Yeah.
And he wants to do human testing.
Mm-hmm.
But then that other scientist says it's a bad idea, so he decides to do it himself, so he's then taking the full responsibility for it, you know.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, it's him that suffers. He's under a lot of financial pressure and people and stuff.
Yeah.
But instead of forcing somebody else to risk their life to test it, he's going to test it himself. And then as part of that, it just kind of goes tragically wrong. And he has this alter ego forced on him.
And he's trying to be a good father as well, I suppose.
Yeah. Do you think the Spider-Man films in general are anti-science? Because in Spider-Man 1 and 2, the villain is always a scientist. And it's not even anti-scientist, it's anti-science. Because it's like these scientists might be good people, and then through the folly of science, so-called, something bad happens to them.
So a lot of the Spider-Man villains are science-based or come about due to scientific testing on yourself, or... Yeah, because the Lizard is the same. He injects himself with a lizard toxin. And then some of them, like Electro in the movies and Sandman, just happen to fall into some science, and then they get blasted and like turned into some horrible mutant creature. I don't think it's anti-science. I don't know if we're reading too much into this, but it might just be saying that like too much progress too fast might be a bad thing. In the same way as Jurassic Park did.
Yeah.
Unchecked progress could lead to disaster. But then in like the comics more than the movies, Peter Parker is a scientist.
Yeah.
And he invents the spider fluid and uses it to help people. So I don't think it's anti-science. What do you think?
I don't know. That's why I was asking you. I want to see what you thought about it.
There's definitely a theme. You don't get any many weird magical Spider-Man villains or...
But yeah, you're right that Peter Parker, more so in the comics, is supposed to also be quite scientifically minded. But that doesn't really come across in the film, really.
He's supposed to be really smart, but he doesn't do anything to show that he's really smart in the movie, does he? He doesn't even work out that Norman Osborn is the Green Goblin, I don't think.
No, he didn't. Even though they sound exactly the same. Well, they don't even sound the same. Like, Spider-Man sounds the same as Peter Parker.
Yeah.
And people don't work out that it's him. Even, like, Mary Jane, even though they, like, talk loads.
Yeah. And he says
he says exactly the same thing to her, like, 5 minutes, like 30 seconds later. Says the exact same thing.
And she doesn't get it.
But Norman Osborn, at least, doesn't sound the same when he's Green Goblin or Norman Osborn.
It's kind of like me speaking like this, and then if I put on a weird costume, it was like, "Hello, I'm Joseph Caudle. I mean, I'm the Green Goblin. There's no way you could know who I am. This slight change to my voice has disguised me completely." I think you'd probably still work out who it was.
I'm not sure you would.
Especially if I led with, "Hi, I'm Joseph Caudle."
Yeah, that would probably give it away.
We haven't talked about the scene where he chases down the guy who stole Uncle Ben's car.
Wait, when are you talking about?
He chases the guy down, and then they have that fight in the dingy, big old, empty thing.
Yeah.
Boathouse, I think it is.
Kicks him out the window. Does he kick him out the window?
So...
Or he thinks about kicking him out the window and then doesn't, or something like that.
No, I think he grabs the guy and pulls him into the light, and he sees that it's this guy who he's released, and then he lets go of the guy, and the guy stumbles back out of a window.
That's it, yeah.
What I would like is for that guy to be someone's uncle, and then that kid to seek revenge.
That kid goes over to Spider-Man, yeah.
And then Spider-Man falls out a window, and then Spider-Man's nephew tracks him down.
What if that guy was Batman's father? No, Batman's uncle. And not only did his parents die, his uncle was killed by Spider-Man.
Yep. But Batman's like 40 somehow, and his uncle's like in his late 20s. Does Bruce Wayne not have any other family?
I mean, not that he likes, I guess. Because you're right, he doesn't like... His parents die and he doesn't like go to his
aunt and uncle
or anything,
grandparents, anyone.
Like his brother or anything, yeah.
Yeah.
So I assume if he does have other family, he doesn't like them very much.
Yeah. Apparently they did quite a bit of like fully CGI Spider-Man.
Yes.
And some of the hardest stuff to do was when he was in that homemade suit in that scene where he's chasing down the robber, because it had all the folds in it and shadows and all that sort of thing. And
I heard about that, and apparently they had a lot of difficulty doing sort of like subtle body language and things.
Yeah. Because
they were worried that because he was wearing a mask, you couldn't sort of see what he was feeling or anything. Because his acting was so deep and subtle.
He wouldn't be very expressive, yeah.
It wouldn't be very expressive. So, they had to think very hard about subtle body language.
Yeah.
When they were CGIing it. That was apparently... I think the guy who did it said it was like the hardest piece of CGI he'd done.
Yeah?
Up to that point, yeah. And apparently they had to... The original Spider-Man suit didn't have, like, a flap or something for the actor to pee out of. So they had to put that in afterwards. Because otherwise you have to take the whole thing off. That on again.
Did you hear that 4 suits were nicked from the from the set? So they were in a locked warehouse. 4 of them were stolen. They were valued at like $50,000 each. And apparently this didn't actually affect filming because they had so many suits.
They had so many, yeah.
But the police were like, okay, it's locked. It must have been an inside job, and they traced it down to a guy, and they found that he'd actually nicked them all. And they also found in his house a $150,000 Batman suit that he'd also nicked. He got like 9 months in prison and had to pay $100,000, I think. So yeah, well done him.
Do you think he was planning on selling them, or did he just wanted to like have them?
He'd already sold them when the police found it. I think like one of them was at his mate's house, and some of them had been sold to collectors.
Or do you reckon he just wanted to dress up as Spider-Man and whatever?
Yeah, probably that.
He was trying to combine the power of Spider-Man and Batman.
Yeah. The power of having no powers.
The power of being rich.
He must have made quite a lot of money off it, so he probably got the power of being rich.
Mm.
Alright, we'll go back to CGI then. Because I think this won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects. I'm fairly sure it did. I'll say it with confidence. This film won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects.
Did it, Joe? Are you sure about that?
100%. I would bet my granny on it. Which would be a weird bet.
2002, yeah?
Yep.
It did not.
What?
It did not. The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers won it that year. It was nominated, but didn't win it.
That means you get my granny now.
He does.
So I...
Hand him over, Joe. Spider-Man 2 won it in 2004.
Curses. That might be what I'm thinking of. Well, this had a lot of groundbreaking visual effects in it, Will. Trust me.
I didn't win the Oscar, so I don't believe you.
Apparently they did a VFX test, right? And they made a fully CGI Spider-Man, and he was climbing up the wall. And they
couldn't tell the difference.
They took it to...
Sorry to steal your...
They took it to the producers, right? And they said, we've got Tobey Maguire climbing up this wall. And the producers they watched it and like, wow, that's amazing. But no, we're not falling for your trick. That's clearly a stuntman climbing up that wall. And the VFX guys like, haha, we got you. It was CGI.
Really, Joe? What a fun and new fact that I've never heard before.
And then I imagine they all high-fived.
The producer just there looking very angry.
Like,
you win this round.
You'll never work in this town again. But yeah, apparently the director Sam Raimi didn't want anything to be like completely CGI. So there's always some real world elements composited in there. And to make it look more realistic, they'd put in elements of dirt and like rusted drains and like pigeon droppings and stuff to make it look like a real place as opposed to just a sterile computer environment. Again, must have been a terrible day at work. What did you do today? I rusted some CGI drains.
I put some pigeon droppings on the table.
On Spider-Man himself. I shall consult my notes. That's the sound of notes. Oh, we haven't talked about the cable car scene.
There's a cable car scene?
Yeah, the scene where the Green Goblin's like, I have your girlfriend and this cable car full of children. I'm going to throw them off this bridge.
Oh, yeah, that scene.
There's no way you could catch both of them at the same time. That's preposterous. Do you like a villain who doesn't necessarily have like an evil scheme, but is more just there to mess with the hero?
You mean like the Joker?
Yeah. And the Green Goblin in this. He's not really out to get anything.
Well, originally it's to kill the board members, but then he's kind of done. And then
he does that.
he runs out of stuff to do very quickly, and he just starts trolling everyone, essentially.
He kind of just toys with Spider-Man.
I do like that, Joe, because they are essentially trolls. Which I approve.
They're just there to wind up the hero.
They're just there to really annoy people.
Yeah. No, I really like that in a villain. Because I always think it's weird in a superhero movie where, like, the hero gets his powers by some random act of chance, and then the villain has an evil plan to take over the world. So if there hadn't been that act of chance at the beginning to give the hero their powers, they would have just taken over the world.
I guess it's kind of the antithesis of the whole, like, the villain isn't really a bad guy, he's just sort of misguided or whatever. This is kind of the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Because in that case you can kind of say, oh, the villain has his plan, but it's not like an evil plan necessarily. As like, you know, he's not doing it just to be evil or whatever. He's trying to do something what he thinks is right. It's just kind of complete chaos for the sake of chaos.
Yeah, because initially the Goblin is there to do what Norman Osborn wants.
Yeah,
and then he's just kind of there to annoy Spider-Man. He asks Spider-Man to join him. And
do what exactly? It's not really clear if they join together what they'd do.
Well, he clearly, the Goblin clearly thinks he's like superior to everyone else. I suppose they'd rule the city. Who knows?
Terrorize the city.
Yeah. I don't think Spider-Man would be that good at terrorizing anyone.
I mean, if he could, if he wanted to.
Really?
Yeah. It's like, you know, the scene in Batman where he lifts up the fat guy.
Oh my goodness, yes. Spider-Man has that built in, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But then if you were like walking down the road eating some falafel and you were suddenly hoisted upside down into the air, initially that would be terrifying. And then a man in like a red like spandex suit was up there and he said in his little like Tobey Maguire voice, "Where are the other drugs going?" Would you be intimidated?
I wouldn't find it any less or more scary than a guy in a pantsuit saying it.
Fair enough.
The only difference is that Batman sounds a bit like, "Look at me, anti-dark and broody," whereas Spider-Man's just, you know, in what I'm sure is a prepubescent voice, despite his age.
They did a lot of stuff that wasn't CGI. Apparently the Oscorp building was a matte painting.
Mm-hmm.
And they also did some model work on the cable car like station that blows up. That was some models, some CGI, and some like actual explosions all overlaid over each other.
Well, I think like the director in all his previous films had been very, very strong towards practical effects.
Right.
And he kind of had to be convinced to do things CGI.
Yeah.
So that's probably why a lot of stuff is still practical.
But Spider-Man does a lot of stuff that is just impossible to do practically.
Yeah, that's the idea that was pitched to him. They basically said, "Yes, okay, you might want to do it visually, but you can't do it actually. You need to do it CGI."
They also attempted some mocap, I believe. So it was really good at capturing the little idiosyncrasies of an actor, right? But when you get a guy to jump off a box, like off this 3 feet in the air, it comes through so well that it's obvious he's jumping off a 3-foot box and not leaping 100 feet off a building.
Okay.
But also at the time, the technology was really constrained to small areas, so they couldn't use it to do the big sweeping movements that Spider-Man would have to do. There just wasn't enough space. So they scrapped that. There
was something else we were talking about. Guardians of the Galaxy, I think.
Yeah.
They tried motion capture and scrapped it. Nobody seems to like it. It's probably good, very good at what it does, but what it does is quite specific, or is only useful in specific situations.
But then, the Rise of the Planet of the Apes, they kind of developed a motion capture that you could do on set. So it got rid of this problem that Spider-Man was having, where you had to do it in a confined area. So it has come a long way, and I think we'll start seeing it more now that it's more accessible. Because they used it for Kong, the new King Kong movie. They used it for they use it for the Hulk nowadays. I think they used it for Beauty and the Beast as well. It's an up and coming thing, Will.
Since Lord of the Rings, years ago.
Yeah. Apparently, all their CG models would like breathe as well, and they'd have like muscle flex under the suit. And apparently, that was quite groundbreaking at the time. It made it look like an actual realistic character.
Well, that's true, but a lot of the times they did forget to animate the mouths when they talked.
Did they?
So like there's sometimes when Spider-Man is talking or like even like screaming or whatever, but his mouth, you don't see his like chin move up and down or anything.
Good job, everyone. Oh, we haven't talked about the fire scene.
Oh yeah, that scene. Green Goblin and his masterful disguise.
Yeah. The greatest film disguise I think I've ever seen. In his weird elongated helmet, and he's just covered in a blanket.
Yeah. Do you reckon he started the fire?
That's a good question. I've never thought of that.
We didn't start the fire, but maybe Green Goblin did.
Maybe. I don't know. What was that building even supposed to be? Was it like an apartment block?
It's just like an apartment building, yeah. With that very dedicated mother who ran out by herself and just forgot her baby.
Yeah. Or she went out and left her baby at home and came back and the building was on fire.
But the baby was young enough. Unless, like, the Green Goblin came to the door and said, "I'll take care of your baby." Thank you, random stranger in a terrifying green outfit.
I've left him some matches to play with, so he'll be fine. That's a terrifying image. The goblin just walking through the corridors, knocking on doors, and going like, "Can I look after your child for a little while, maybe?"
I don't have a child.
Okay, I'll try your neighbour. He's Just there holding like a Molotov cocktail.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe he did. He could have started the fire.
Because he's trying to kind of lure Batman... I said Batman there. He's trying to lure Spider-Man in, isn't he?
Yeah.
So...
But how did he know Spider-Man would get there? Maybe he started like 4 or 5 fires and Spider-Man's just been at school all day.
That's another thing. New York is a big city, right?
Yeah.
And Spider-Man doesn't have any sort of like radio or anything. So he's limited to whatever crimes he happens to see.
Yeah.
There could be like a really major incident really far away, and he would have no idea.
Yeah. Oh dear. The other thing about that fire scene, but the other thing you pointed out when we watched it, is the Goblin and Spider-Man face off, and Goblin's like, "Have you considered my tempting offer?" And Spider-Man's like, "No, thank you," but he says it in a much more cheesy way that I can't remember. And then the Goblin throws a bomb at him. But it's not a normal bomb. It's a weird spinny blade bomb.
Oh, yeah. Because earlier he uses a bomb that just dissolves, like disintegrates the whole group of board executives.
Yeah.
He could have used the exact same bomb there, and that would have been it. Spider-Man would have been killed. But no, he has to use his fancy spinny blade bomb.
Oh, yeah. I love a villain who has nonsense gadgets like that.
Yeah.
Again, it wouldn't work in any other film. If it was like, going back to Batman Begins again, if like Ra's al Ghul threw one and 5 spinny blades flew out,
That would have been ridiculous.
it would be nonsense. But in this film, it works.
That would not be a powerful weapon against the enemy. But we are initiated, aren't we, Bruce? Members of the League of Shadows.
Jane pulls out a little spinny blade bomb and throws it.
Of course. You're my spinny blade bomb, Batman.
And Spider-Man gets like cut on the arm, but it's the least deep cut I've ever seen.
Does he save the baby?
Yeah. He
does.
He swings in and saves the baby, brings the baby down, and the policeman is like, "I'm going to arrest you, Spider-Man." And then someone's like, "There's another person in there." And Spider-Man's like, I'm off to save them. I mean, if there wasn't another person there, I'd stay here.
Oh, yes. Yeah, because the Green Goblin does a very convincing, "Help me, help me."
He really does.
That's it.
He's an excellent impressionist.
Yes.
A lot happens in this movie. You get a lot of action scenes. Because there's also the scene where the Green Goblin attacks, is it Quest Industries?
Oh, the other people, yeah. That I think it's like Quest Aerospace or something.
Yeah, because they have an exosuit, which is just like a man in a coffin.
Just a tin can that somebody puts on. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's got 2 big jet engines on the side.
It's supposed to be like a top secret military experiment, but he manages to get really close without anyone noticing.
Yeah. Did you hear there was supposed to be a Wolverine cameo?
I heard about that, yeah. But they couldn't get hold of the Wolverine costume or something?
Yeah. Hugh Jackman was actually in New York. I think he was on set. But they couldn't get the costume to him on time. But I think if that had come off, we would have got a lot more people popping up in other movies.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a shame.
Which would have been good.
Yeah. Because then you might have had Spider-Man pop up in one of the X-Men movies, which would have been pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what Wolverine would have done, though. I think he was just supposed to walk past or be in the background. But
yeah. But then you'd have thought he would have like helped out with Green Goblin.
Yeah. Although, how would he catch Green Goblin? Green Goblin can fly.
Wolverine can jump very high.
Can he?
Probably.
It's his power now.
I'm sure that at some point... who is it? But somebody throws Wolverine.
That does ring a bell, actually. I can't remember where from. I think it is in one of the original X-Men movies. So Spider-Man would just pick up Wolverine and throw him at the Green Goblin.
Throw him.
What I like to think is the scene would have been Wolverine would have been walking past. Spider-Man swings down,
randomly
grabs him and throws him, but just misses, and he just flies into a skyscraper through like a glass window, and we never see him again.
In no other film, and his disappearance is never mentioned. He just never shows up again. Like, what happened to Wolverine? I don't know. Who's Wolverine?
And then in X-Men 2, like, Spider-Man could have been there and Wolverine could have thrown him at someone. It could have been a theme.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because we haven't talked about the final fight yet. They go into just some abandoned brickwork place. And they have a big old fight.
Yeah.
You a fan of the big old fight?
I mean, it's pretty generic, to be honest.
I actually really like it. I don't know why. I like this movie a lot more than you do.
You do. What did I give it? I gave it a 6 on the IMDb.
Yeah.
Even though, so I gave it a 6 on IMDb, but I enjoy it quite a lot. But yeah, the final fight was a bit, whatever. Take it or leave it.
But I suppose you've got to think of this as one of the first. So it was doing stuff that people had never seen before. This movie it was the first movie ever to make $100 million in its opening weekend. People loved this.
Yeah.
And it was something you'd never seen before. And because I suppose we've been jaded by, what are we, like 6 Spider-Man movies now?
Yeah.
I also think I went in with low expectations because I remembered it being very cheesy. And there are some like bad scenes. Like there's a weird scene where Peter Parker takes the bins out and then he talks over the fence to Mary Jane.
Oh yeah.
She's like, I want to be an actress. I'm going to be a big star. And he's like, I'm going to be a Spider-Man. Whoops, shouldn't have said that. But yeah, the final fight, what was I going to say about it? There's a bit where the goblin punches him in the face and like a whole load of like spit comes out of his mouth.
Yeah, that apparently originally that was blood.
Yep.
But they had to colour it in because like lower the age rating.
Yeah. That fight scene to me seems better than something like at the end of like Iron Man 2 where it's just CGI robots punching each other. And,
yeah. Or Transformers.
Yeah. Where nothing seems to really impact anything else. It's one of those fights where
I get what you mean. It's more personal.
Yeah. And it's one of those fights where it feels like people are actually getting hurt as well. I mean, obviously I know they're not because they're actors. But I feel like Tobey Maguire's taking a beating. We've barely touched on Mary Jane or Harry, but they don't have much to do.
Harry doesn't do much except basically colour coordinate his clothes.
Does he?
You aware of that? In the like,
no.
It's either the Thanksgiving scene or the scene with it in a restaurant. But Norman Osborn,
right.
I think it's the Thanksgiving scene, but I'm not sure. Norman Osborn, no, it's not. I don't know. Whatever. Yeah. One of those two scenes. Norman Osborn is wearing the clothes that he's wearing are like the color of his suit, and Peter Parker is wearing clothes the color of his suit. And Norman Osborn's son is wearing like a mix of the two.
Ah, okay.
Which is like symbolic between his loyalty to his father and to his best friend, who are these enemies. So there you go. And also, apparently, Norman Osborn's son and Peter Parker are supposed to be like best friends in the film, obviously.
Yeah.
But apparently, the actors didn't like each other very much.
Well done.
Well, I think the actor who played Norman Osborn's son said that the actor who played Peter Parker had like fish-like features or something like that. Okay. Maybe it wasn't a fish, like frog-like features, something like that.
Yeah.
In some interview. Apparently he meant it as like sort of light-hearted, but he took it quite seriously.
Fish Face Maguire took it seriously.
Yeah, Fish Face Maguire took it seriously.
And Mary Jane, anything at all to say about her? How many times is she in peril in this film?
At least 2. So
the balcony scene?
Yeah, and also the scene just before they do the upside down kissing. And
the cable car scene. That's 3.
That's 3, yeah.
That's what she's there for, basically.
That's also what Aunt May is there for at the end. Like, at the beginning, she's kind of a bit more useful.
Yeah.
But towards the end, and also in Spider-Man 2, she's basically also just there to be
pretty much,
away. Excuse, yeah.
Yeah. Do you like the ending where she finally admits her love for Peter Parker and Peter Parker's like, nope?
No! It's really stupid. Why not? Like, he's loved her for like ages, and then suddenly he's like, nah, whatever.
Well, it's supposed to be.
I know what the reason supposedly is, but it's a really dumb reason.
It really is, yeah. Because he doesn't leave her alone.
Yeah, exactly.
If he actually cared about her well-being, he'd never see her again.
Yeah. They like move to a different city or something.
Yeah.
Did you hear about the spider cam?
Spider cam? No.
You didn't hear about that?
Tell me about the spider cam. I'm imagining, before you say what it is, I'm imagining they got like a camera and then mounted it on like an 8-legged robot and it just followed Peter Parker around.
It's not that cool, unfortunately.
Oh well, go on.
So it's spider, but because the cool kids, they spelled it SPY. It's like spider cam.
Yeah.
But basically, they wanted to have like camera footage that was sort of following Spider-Man around very closely as he was swinging around. You know?
Right, yeah.
And sort of a camera that kind of moved as Spider-Man would move.
Okay.
So, to get their sort of background plates, they would like then CGI Spider-Man in.
Yeah.
But to get the sort of background shots, they would basically have this camera that was like mounted on a cable, and it could like drop down very rapidly. And they would build a CGI model of the city, and program in the path they wanted the camera to follow on the model, and then put that into real life, and the camera would follow the same path and move around very quickly and things like that.
Oh, cool.
And then that's how they'd get their background shots, and then they'd CGI in Spider-Man.
Huh. That is cool.
But they only did that. They only did that for the very last shot, or the very last shot of the film.
Right.
That's the only time they used it, and then they use it more in the next films.
It always baffles me on a film that there are people who put in loads of time and effort, like into the spider cam and into the animatronic Green Goblin face, and then it just doesn't get used. It just gets cut or thrown away, or... Those people must have spent months on that.
Yeah. I think basically all of the swinging Spider-Man shots in 2 and 3, they use it.
Oh, cool, okay. Is there anything else to discuss? I don't think there is. Ending? Best effect, worst effect?
Best effect, worst effect.
Alright, well, best effect. What was it? Tell me.
I like the tray scene.
Yeah? The tray
when
catch?
They stuck the tray to his fingers, yeah.
Yeah.
And he had to do that, just because doing that in real life would be pretty cool. Because it would have been so easy to have CGI'd that, but no.
I do like it when they do that, but at what point do you stop? When do you say, okay, we've done this 100 times now, we're not going to get it?
Well, apparently the point of stopping is past 156.
Yeah. I really like mainly because I know how difficult it was to do, but I like the scenes where he's crawling over the buildings in his homemade suit, where they had to put in all the folds and the fabric and all that nonsense. I like those shots. There are some things in here that don't hold up. I mean, I was going to go on a little detour before we did worst effects, but I realised my detour is literally the worst effect.
Oh, go on then, you do your worst effect first then.
I was going to say there's a few bits that don't hold up, but I think the one that sticks out the most is the scene early on where he's jumping over the rooftops just before he uses his webbing for the first time. That looks a bit ropey.
So is that your worst effect?
I think so, unless I can think of anything else that's worse.
I was gonna go for just the Green Goblin hat.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty rad.
Knowing what could have been, is a letdown. I'll send you a link. Actually, I'll put it on the Twitter to that Green Goblin helmet because it is brilliant. Does that mean that if you'd worn the flight suit, you would have had the Goblin helmet?
I think because there's a scene earlier where they show the glider with just the regular pilot.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the helmet on.
Doesn't he? Oh, okay. Because he stole they say he stole the flight suit as well.
Yeah.
So I assume the Goblin suit is the flight suit.
Probably, yeah. Did he steal those bombs as well, or did he just make them?
I think he made them. I don't know. Maybe he stole them as well. Or maybe he used the lab to make them. He probably did that. He used his company to make them.
Probably. Oh, we didn't talk about the fact that he gets kicked out of his own company in a nice cliche.
And then kills the board members.
Yep.
Even though I'm pretty sure that wouldn't really help you.
I think he killed them all before they announced it.
Right, okay.
I think that's the idea.
That makes sense then.
How good would it have been if Batman got kicked out of his own company and then just murdered all the board members?
Well, probably in the new Batman, that's what he'd do, isn't it?
Yeah. Just break into all their houses.
Yeah.
Throw a little spinny blade bomb.
Yeah. But instead of just regular blades, they'd be batarangs.
Yeah. It's not even an effective way of killing someone.
No.
I'm slightly lacerated. If you got that on the jugular, maybe. But
because like they don't like go directly for him. They like clearly just
they spread out,
grazing past him,
and then they come back. So doesn't that mean that they're flying back towards the person who threw them? I'll kill you. I'll kill me. I don't care. I'll end us both. All right. We best affected. We worst affected.
We did.
Jennifer Lawrence.
Yes, please.
So the obvious choice is, of course, Aunt May.
Of course. Yeah. No. Next.
Try again. Mary Jane?
No. Too much of a main character.
She could be the person that Peter Parker fights in the boxing ring.
No, I've got one. I know who she should be. The newspaper boss.
Yeah, why not?
Because that's already my favourite character.
This is the only way to improve.
Like capitalising on the success. That's the only way to make my favourite character even better.
To make him Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah.
You could do the outro as him. You were
just shout.
Before the podcast, we were lamenting that there were no voices that we could do.
Yeah.
But you could just shout the outro and say that you're fired if you don't follow us on Twitter.
Okay. I know who else she could be.
Go on.
The woman who, the woman at the fire.
The terrible mother.
The terrible mother, yeah.
Yeah.
It fits with her latest film.
It does, yeah.
Mother, which you have to shout because it's got an exclamation mark at the end.
Yeah.
Mother!
That would be the baby, surely.
Yeah.
He brings out the baby and places it in the mother's arms, and she unwraps it, and it's just Jennifer Lawrence, and she goes, "Mother, you left me in a fire.
You left me to die, you fool.
I could have been killed."
Not for this some sort of Spider-Man here. Think the newspaper boss.
I think that's the correct answer.
My best character. Even better.
Alright, so...
One day, in the style of my fabulous artworks that I make for these...
Beautiful artwork.
I'm going to make artwork where I just put Jennifer Lawrence in all of our films.
You should go back, find the character we selected to be Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah.
And then put her in.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
I was listening to like a 4 tips for being good at podcasting thing earlier today, and one of them was like, make sure you've got good artwork.
I think we've got that.
We have the best artwork.
We have the best artwork.
He was like, if you have boring, bland stuff that's from Google Images, no one will click.
Ours is not boring and bland.
No, it's great. So we're on the way up, Will. Leaderboards? Leaderboards.
So mine is currently Alien. We've done too many. I don't remember how. Alien, Jurassic Park, Batman, The Running Man.
Yes.
For me.
And mine is currently Jurassic Park, Alien, Batman, Running Man.
I'm going to put it between Batman and Running Man.
Yeah, I think I will as well. I like Spider-Man, I really do. It was much more fun than I thought it was. But it's not better than Batman Begins.
It's not better than Batman, no.
No, Batman Begins is a top film.
Batman's really good. Spider-Man is okay. Enjoy it. It's like fun, but
yeah.
It's
certainly not an amazing film objectively, but it's a good superhero film, I think. Because I think some superhero films have got too bogged down in their own like grittiness.
Well, Batman started that, and it worked very well. Batman did it very well, and then other superhero films started trying to do it. It's kind of
so like Man of Steel. It should have been more like this, bright, colourful, a little bit nonsense, kind of cheesy. Yeah. But instead, it was all dark and grey and brooding. It doesn't work for all superheroes, but it works for the colourful characters like Spider-Man. Yeah. I think we did it, Will.
We did it.
Anything else to say, or think, or do?
No, not that I can think of.
Cool. Do you want to tell the good listeners that we actually have now? Because every other time we've said that, we haven't had any listeners.
We do have listeners now.
At least 3. Do you want to tell? What I was going to say is, do you want to tell our good listeners what we're doing next week?
Next time.
Next time, in 2 weeks. I'm sorry.
What are we doing next time?
Blade Runner.
Blade Runner, yes.
Someone's excited.
I love that film.
I have not seen it for ages.
We're going to make it better by putting Jennifer Lawrence in it, Joe. That's what we're going to do.
I feel like it's going to go high on your leaderboard after that. Our leaderboards may become more diverged.
No, you like Blade Runner?
I haven't seen it for ages. I can't remember. I don't have an attachment to it.
Good. I really like it.
Actually, I don't think I've ever seen it all the way through.
Are you even worthwhile? I had to drag you to go and watch 2001: A Space Odyssey.
You did not have to drag
and you
me.
decided you really liked it. And now I'm going to have to drag you to watch Blade Runner as well.
Yep.
Do you even watch films?
I watched Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 3.
You only watch Spider-Man films.
It's all I know. Apparently 2001 was on in the IMAX recently.
Yeah.
And we missed it.
I don't know, I quite like the atmosphere that we had it in.
Yeah, because we saw it, they said, as Kubrick would have wanted, with an intermission in it and all that sort of thing, didn't we?
Yeah.
And there was some fisticuffs in the intermission.
There was some fisticuffs, which I didn't see, but I only saw the aftermath.
Yeah, it's very confusing. So we were sat in the intermission having a good old chat about the first half of 2001, and I look across and then direct Will's attention also to this scuffle that's going on, and there's two guys kind of like really close to each other. All of a sudden they kind of part, and there's like a third guy in the middle.
Yeah.
And apparently this guy had punched 5 people.
But nobody looked injured.
No. And no one was like, ow, my face, please mend me.
So if he had punched 5 guys, it's like the worst punching that I'm aware of. Because like when you say you've punched 5 guys, I imagine it's like a good thwack, you know. Yeah. You're like trying to do some damage. That's what a punch is. But I guess he was just like, eh.
Maybe someone got a burger from 5 Guys. And he punched it.
He punched that, yeah. That could have been it.
These people are like, hey, you can't go around punching burgers.
We've solved it, Joe.
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's what it is.
So yeah, that's our exciting adventure to see 2001.
Yeah.
Which we will have to get to one day. Because it's an amazing special effects movie.
It is. We were going to do it for the Spaceship Special, but we decided we want it to give it its own film.
Yeah.
Its own film. Its own...
podcast.
Episode. Some of the ones on there will be getting their own podcast anyway.
Yeah.
But, for example, Guardians of the Galaxy, but that's because there's a lot to talk about that's not the ship.
Yeah. So...
Whereas 2001: A Space Odyssey is pretty much entirely set on spaceships, so...
Episode 21, do you think?
Yeah, maybe.
Just because numbers?
We'll see.
Cool. We will.
We're also going to do Death Race.
Yes. Shout out to all 3 of our listeners. If you want to suggest things, please do. We'd love to hear them.
Yeah. Death Race was a suggestion.
Yep.
And so we're going to do that at some point.
Well, we've got like a plan mapped out till episode 12, haven't we?
We have some gaps in that though. We have some question marks.
I think we do.
There's at least one. So we might shove it in there or have it later. We'll see.
Yeah. So yeah, if you have any suggestions, please contact us through the following addresses. William Wilson. That's your cue.
I don't know whether to do it in the newspaper guy's voice. What is his voice anyway? Just shouting. That's it.
He speaks fast and shouts, yeah.
Why don't you want to email us at Gmail? You're fired.
Pretty much that, yeah. You do it if you want. It's your call. You can do it in the classic William Wilson voice that we haven't heard recently.
It's very monotone. Very boring. Yes. Spider-Man came out in 2002, probably. Alright, I will see. I'll try. Let's see what have I got. Practically Effective at Gmail.
Alright, email,
Twitter,
Facebook, Twitter, and then where people can find us.
Where can people find us?
Where they can listen to our exciting podcast.
Oh, the YouTube, the SoundCloud, and the iTunes.
Look at you go. That sounded really patronising, I'm sorry.
It's because your years as a teacher.
Yeah, they've rubbed off on me.
Well done, Will. You're doing really well.
Remembered all 4 of them. Would you like a sticker?
I would actually. A sticker, that would be great. What? So you want some thanks for listening to our podcast? You should email us at practicallyfx. No, that's not even our email address, is it?
You're fired!
That's on Twitter. I'm sorry, I'm fired. That's on Twitter.
Yeah. Feel free to do them as well if you'd like.
Well, I already did the Twitter in that guy's voice. So, yeah.
Whatever you want.
We have our email, practicallyeffective@gmail.com. And the Twitter, as the very angry man just mentioned a few moments ago, at practicallyfx. And we're on Facebook. And you can listen to us on SoundCloud, and on iTunes, and on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for listening.
No. They should thank us.
That's a really good point.
Email us your thanks. If Jennifer Lawrence is listening, you can email me personally. Don't email the show. Please.
We know you're listening, Jennifer. Stop ignoring us.
Alright. We done?
I think we are.